Welcome back, everyone. So, the penultimate episode of the series begins with the task force watching the news, as this news anchor, the same one from the previous episode, shares the fact that Kiyomi Takada has died. And that's really all that happens in this opening scene, but I do want to comment on Light's expression here, because it's difficult to interpret just how he's feeling right now. Like at the end of the last episode, he was smiling as he looked on at his work, having had Takada set herself on fire. But here, I don't know, he seems almost upset. The show even goes the extra mile of obscuring his eyes, which makes it even more difficult to properly ascertain just what he's thinking in this moment. Now, I will say, this could just be an act, him putting on a facade so that it looks like he's grieving, since he was pretending to be worried about her in the previous episode, which may have very well been yesterday. Or hell, this could all just be happening on the same day for all we know. But regardless, like I said, the scene's really quick, and from there it leads into this episode's title card, which is
Episode 36, January 28th.
So, as we enter the episode proper, it seems like little to no time has passed. Everyone's still wearing the same clothes, and the lighting is identical to what we saw in the previous scene. They're even still watching the news, though this time around they're showing 4 different programs simultaneously, and well, let's take a look at what we got here.
Who's gonna be Kida's next spokesperson? Kida's message still needs to be spread and someone's gotta do it.
Yeah, so that's happening. People around the country, or hell, maybe even the world, are all clamoring to become the new voice of Kida. And when it comes to what these people are saying, I'd argue that this guy's the tamest one of the bunch, because the messages these people are delivering range from sexist,
"This is not a woman's job. Kida, please make me your new representative,"
to just downright callous.
If she was that careless, she couldn't have taken her position as Kida's spokesperson that seriously.
And also, just a dishonorable mention from this dude from Sakura TV who also tries chiming in. But before he gets the chance to actually say anything out of pocket, Ide does us all a favor and turns that shit off. But I will say that when it comes to Sakura TV, it's wild that they're still trying to put someone back up on that stage. Or, well, no, it's not wild that the network is trying to do it. It's wild that there are people who are still signing up to do this shit on that network. Like, Kida has killed multiple hosts on that channel at this point. So I just don't understand the logic behind actually wanting to show one's face on Sakura TV when it's clear that Kida just doesn't fuck with them like that. But to move things along, according to Matsuda, all the news stations are currently airing their own broadcast, with all of them vying to become Kida's new personal network, and it's just really gross. But at the same time, it's to be expected, right? I mean, broadcasting Kida's message does wonders for ratings, as we saw back in episodes 10 and 11.
If this is for real, our ratings are gonna go through the roof! Our audience rating should go up 60, no more like 70% after this.
And I have no doubt that they did skyrocket after that. Just like I have no doubt that NHN's numbers jumped up after Takada was chosen to be the new official spokesperson for Kida. And actually, just real quick, while we're talking about episode 11, I never noticed this before, but remember that news anchor that had his own broadcast praising the police for standing up against Kida, saying that Kida was a threat to their constitution and that the people of Japan needed to stand up and fight back against him? Well, fun fact, he actually worked for NHN.
I am NHN's golden news anchor, Koki Tanakabara.
So yeah, I just thought it was interesting that back in 2008, one of NHN's anchors was decrying Kida, and yet in 2012, one of them went on to become the official spokesperson for him. But anyway, let's move on.
Last night's judgments unfolded just as planned. That means Takada and Mikami have had no problems contacting each other.
So I have a couple of things that I want to say about this. For starters, it looks like, despite him seeming upset in that opening scene, Light's not even remotely broken up over the fact that Takada is dead. Which isn't all that surprising, but that first scene did have me curious as to whether or not he had any remorse for doing what he did. And I will add that, as messed up as it was also necessary. And not just because of the pieces of the notebook that she had on her. I mean, yes, that was obviously a factor, and Light did make sure that she burned everything that she wrote on, but that wasn't the only issue that Light needed to contend with. There was also the issue of Mello and the fact that he was killed via a heart attack. And I know Light doesn't get confirmation that he was killed that way, but given Takada was still stuck in the back of the truck, despite having access to Mello's phone to call him, it's fairly obvious that she didn't write any instructions for when she killed Mello, and that his corpse had to have been nearby because he wouldn't intentionally leave his phone in an area where she'd be able to easily steal it. Hell, now that I think about it, given the fact that she never interacted with the Shinigami and instead only received information on how to use it from Light, she may not have even been aware that you can write instructions for how to kill someone. It's not like it's something she would need to know how to do because that's not how Mikami has ever been shown to kill people anyway. He just sticks to heart attacks. And if it is true that she didn't know about that aspect of the rules, then it would make her not writing down instructions for Mello to release her before dying make a lot more sense. But getting back to my main point, if one or both of the team show up and find out that that's how Mello died from a heart attack, then it begs the question of, well, how? The only people who know Mello's real name are the members of the task force. And maybe the SPK, but that's not something that's confirmed one way or another. But regardless, when it comes to the SPK, they know that only 3 people should even have the ability to kill him, and all 3 of them are under constant surveillance. Misa by Mogi, Nier, and Rester, Mikami by Giovanni, and Light by Aizawa and Ide. So if none of the 3 potential Kiras did it, then that means it must have been Takada. And if that's the case, then that calls into question everything they thought they knew about what was going on. So with Takada having killed Mello, she had turned herself into a liability that needed to be taken care of, if for no other reason than to cover up the fact that she was the one that killed Mello. But the thing is, even with understanding that, my problem with that whole situation is more so Light's cruel indifference to her as she begged him to save her. Like, it wouldn't have been difficult to offer her some sort of reassurance that he was coming to rescue her, even if it was ultimately a lie. Like, you would think that her having killed the man who made the call to kidnap his sister and kill his father would have earned her, I don't know, more than what she got. I mean, dude was putting on a better performance for Aizawa and Ide in the car to make them think that he cared about her than he bothered to do for Takada on the phone when he was actually talking to her. But anyway, aside from that, I also wanted to mention that he says that last night's judgments went off without a hitch, because Takada and Mikami were able to get in contact with each other, which would actually be pretty impressive considering just how many names she would have had to have written down for Light to say that the killings went just as planned. But that's something we'll talk more about next time. So the next thing that happens is that the task force gets a call from Nier, who's calling to confirm that he still wants to meet on the 28th at 1 p.m, and Light agrees, thinking to himself that he knew that Nier would ultimately end up sticking to that date, for reasons that'll become obvious a little later in the episode. And then we hear Nier say,
"Very well, the 28th, the day after tomorrow."
Okay, so when it comes to this, I want to first acknowledge the fact that it looks like I made a mistake, because in the last video I said it was the 26th when Takada got kidnapped, but actually it must have been the 25th, seeing as she was taken at the end of the day and we saw that building burning down the following morning, or, well, earlier today. So yeah, it hasn't even been 24 hours since that happened. Shit, it probably hasn't even been 12 hours since she died, since it's still daytime on that same day. But the other thing I wanted to point out is the fact that Nier has his own color scheme now, and it's represented as an icy sort of blue, which puts him as the 3rd person to don this particular color, following behind Naomi and then Ryuzaki. And maybe Misa and Ryuk too, but let's not talk about that right now. But when it comes to Nier, I'd say that it's fitting, seeing as Nier's already consistently compared to Ryuzaki, both in the story and by fans of the show and manga. But after this, they end the call and we hear this from Matsuda and Ide.
The day after tomorrow, huh? Isn't it getting exciting?
Yeah, I can't help but wonder what Nier wants to show us.
So while it doesn't surprise me that Matsuda is all gung-ho about meeting up with Nier tomorrow, it is a little surprising that Ide is excited too. Like, we know that Aizawa ended up telling Mogi about the whole passing notes thing, but did he not also tell Ide? I would think that he would, given Ide was the one who originally told Aizawa that he should follow his gut and reach out to Nier, that he would support him in that endeavor. But given Ide's response about being excited too, I'm thinking that maybe Aizawa hasn't told him everything. Like, to clarify things a bit more, Aizawa is not looking forward to this meeting in the same way that they are.
When the day comes, there's a good chance we might all be killed. Don't you understand that?
And I feel like that question really only makes sense if he's made them aware of everything that he's aware of. Because if he hasn't, then their response here isn't that surprising. Especially from Matsuda, because I feel fairly confident that Aizawa hasn't told him anything. Which I totally understand not doing. Matsuda's... he's just a little too much of a light fanboy to view things objectively, so... probably better to keep him in the dark. But when it comes to Ide, I don't really understand the choice of not telling him if that's what Aizawa's decided to do, which, again, seems to be the case. But after that, we check in with the SPK real quick, as we see Nier specifically asking Giovanni whether or not he'll make it in time. Which makes sense. I mean, Rester's already with Nier, and Lidner's, well, she's kind of out of a job at this point, so really, Giovanni's the only one who's actively out in the field at the moment. But once Giovanni confirms that he'll be there, Nier tells everyone that they need to give it their all as they head into this final stretch. And from there, we transition to January 28th, 2013. And geez, what a gloomy day it is. Now, after seeing a couple of shots of the city, we check in on Giovanni as he sits outside of a building. And at first, I didn't know what building this was, but luckily, while editing the last video, I happened to pause on this frame right here, which looks pretty similar to the one we're seeing in this episode, which leads me to believe that he's waiting outside of Mikami's job. But we only stay here for a second before Giovanni speeds off, very likely heading towards the yellow box. And from there we head back to the task force for a moment, where we see them having a conversation with Nier.
First of all, in regards to Misa Amane, we've already set her free.
And okay, I always found it odd that they just let her go. The whole reason Nier took her was because he assumed she was the second Kira, based on the fact that she was previously apprehended on suspicion of being the second Kira. And while we, as the audience, know that she isn't a part of Light's plan today, I don't see how Nier and the others can be 100% sure that she isn't. For all they know, she might leave here, hop on a train, head to the woods, and dig up another notebook before heading to the yellow box herself as some sort of contingency plan. It's not like Light couldn't just text her the address now, seeing as she clearly has her phone back. Also, it especially doesn't make sense because at this point they know that Light is Kira, and whatever they have planned today is just meant to prove that, so wouldn't they just have to go and arrest her again after they apprehend Light anyway? Or are they just saying screw it when it comes to Misa? And just also, I know it's been over half a decade at this point, and it's mostly irrelevant now, but what the hell ever happened to the physical evidence that they obtained from those videotapes? Like, how did she ever walk away scot-free? I don't know, it all just seems a little odd to me. And just one last thing, why spring for a penthouse suite for her? I mean, I'm sure she appreciates it, but it's just kinda crazy to me to blow money pampering someone you believe, or hell, likely know to be the second Kira. But moving on, from there Light goes on to speak with Mogi so that he can get his portion of the password for the safe they're using to secure the notebook. And from there, each of the other task force members provide their passwords, and there it is.
The killer notebook.
And here the episode goes on to spend a minute, or to be more specific, it spends roughly 40 seconds having Aizawa go on and list off the original rules of the notebook. And I will say that I do like the addition of showing some of the people who have been killed by the notebook over the years. Though, I will add that I'm not too sure what the thought process was behind the selection of clips here, cause they seem a little random, both in the order that they're shown and in the selection of individuals being showcased. For example, the sequence starts with the director of the FBI dying, and it ends with Demigawa's death. And then in the middle of those two, we see members of the SPK, the Mafia, the Yotsuba group, and Takada TV all make appearances. We also see Ukita, Ray Penber, Watari, director Takimura, Iber, Weddy, and Blind L. Taylor. But we don't see Naomi, or Takada, or Mello, or even Ryuzaki for some reason, despite them all playing much bigger roles than any of the people who were included. But yeah, not much else to say about this moment other than immediately after this montage, they all agreed to let Aizawa be the one to hold on to the notebook. And from there, they make their way to the yellow box.
Looks like this is the end. No, more like the beginning. The perfect world of Kira.
So Light's feeling really confident about how things are gonna go today, and I can't say that I blame him. I mean, by now, I feel like I've already gotten my point across regarding why it seems like he's going to win today. But I do want to add just one more thing that I noticed when watching this scene that supports that idea. The weather, which I know sounds odd, but let me explain. So when watching this scene, you can see that it's clearly very dreary right now, which is something the show is definitely making an effort to showcase as the task force makes this trek up to the yellow box. And I'd argue that it's worth talking about because this dreary weather, this overcast, in addition to the rain pouring down, I feel like it invites comparisons to the other times Light has claimed victory over his major adversaries. And for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to define a major adversary as someone who's represented by the color blue, seeing as those are the people who have typically given him the most trouble over the years. So keeping that in mind, if you pay attention to the weather during the scenes where Light wins against these individuals, you'll notice a trend. For example, with Naomi, during episodes 6 and 7, when Light's talking to her, you'll notice that there's not a lick of straight sunlight in those episodes. It's very cloudy throughout their entire conversation. Hell, the name of the episode where she dies was deadass called Overcast, and the very first shot of that episode is of the sky looking awfully similar to how it looks right now. Furthermore, we all know episode 25, we all remember the rooftop scene and everything that follows it. The whole second half of that episode saw the city shrouded in a thick overcast, accompanied by rain and lightning, which then brings us here, with Light on his way to meet with Nier, the latest representative of the color blue, icy though it may be. So, given the implicit focus on the weather during this scene, it just seems to further imply that Light really is walking away from this as the victor. And okay, just to go on a quick tangent, I do actually want to talk about this a little more, but in relation to episode 1. Like I mentioned in that video that sunlight, or the lack thereof, was used frequently to frame certain scenes. Like when Light's freaking out after killing someone, it's raining. But when he decides that he'll use the notebook to change the world, the sun comes out and bathes him in its warm glow. Or the fact that the whole conversation he has with Ryuk when he shows up happened when it was raining. But then when he explains how he intends on being the god of the new world, the sun once again comes out and fills the room. Hell, it even surrounds his head, making him appear holy or divine in a biblical sense. And there are other moments too, but I'm more so pointing out the fact that in that first episode, sunlight was used to paint Light as a sort of hero, a person who may be using an evil weapon, but his intentions with it were pure. And yet, from that point on, his biggest victories, i.e. killing substantial threats, happen when the sun is nowhere to be seen. And I just thought that that was pretty interesting and wanted to point it out. But getting back to this episode, Light goes on to say that everyone who knows of the notebook's existence, all of them apparently, will die today. Which makes me wonder, does that apply to Mikami? No, right? I mean, Light's always been a fan of having someone with the Shinigami eyes on the payroll, but maybe he'd get rid of him? I mean, I would after that whole, well, we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But then that makes me wonder about Misa and what happens to her seeing as she doesn't know about the Death Note anymore. Well, regardless, we'll talk more about everyone's fate in the next video. So when the gang arrives, Aizawa goes in first and confirms that Nier and the SPK are inside, which then leads to the task force going ahead and making their way inside too, and okay, I just want to take a second to point out the song that's playing in the background of this scene, because it's actually my favorite one of the series. It's fittingly called Towards the Climax, because it's been playing the entire time we've been watching the task force, well, make their way towards the climax of the series. And I also want to take note of this perhaps unnecessarily long sequence of them slow motioning their way to the SPK. I imagine it's meant to sort of build up the suspense, which I feel like it does for the most part, especially given the way it ends, with Light opening the door to find Nier just sitting there, surrounded by his finger puppets and wearing a mask of Ryuzaki? Well, while I'd love to just get right into all of this, we're gonna have to take a quick break as we jump back into how to use it. First up, Looks like we got ourselves a throwback rule. The very first rule from the very first episode. The human whose name is written in this note shall die. And interestingly enough, I never actually covered this rule in that video. I think I just mentioned how it was cool that they included the rules during the breaks. So in an effort to cover it now, what this rule means is that if you write down a person's name in this this here notebook, then they will die. So yeah, kind of self-explanatory, especially at this point in the story. So anyway, next up, the human who uses this note can neither go to heaven nor hell. And this one is another callback, this time from episode 4. And I guess I'll also add that this is something Ryuk actually says to Light back in episode 1.
Any human who's used a death note can neither go to heaven nor hell for eternity.
So that's neat, a nice little callback. And as far as explaining what this rule means, I'm just gonna save that for next time, actually. So when we get back from the break, we find the members of the task force standing opposite the members of the SPK, and nothing's really happening between the groups right now. They're all just standing there staring at each other. I will note though that we can see that the members of the task force, or well, Matsuda, Ide, and Aizawa are all sweating. And that makes sense. I could see why they'd all be nervous. This setting is a bit off-putting. Not to mention the fact that Nier's over there rocking that freaky looking mask of Ryuzaki. I want to say that it also makes sense that Light isn't sweating here because, well, why would he be? He knows that he has this whole thing in the bag. That being said, it is worth pointing out that the members of the SPK, plus Mogi, are also not sweating. Which does make sense. I mean, they think that they figured out Light's plan, so they're confident that they're gonna win here. Which, okay. I mean, I personally don't see it going down that way at this point, given everything y'all don't seem to know about what he's done, but, you know, confidence is key, or whatever, I guess. Anyway, after this we get insight into Light's thoughts again.
You're far inferior to L. You have no right to be wearing a mask of L.
And I find it so interesting that Light just seems so pissed about Nier having done this. Like, you can hear the vitriol in his tone. Like, how dare you wear my Ryuzaki's face like that, you little bitch. And at first I was confused as to why he was so upset about it, especially seeing as he was one of the first people to make that comparison of them seeming very similar.
This strange feeling. What is it?
But I think what it comes down to is Light sees Ryuzaki as the Kakarot to his Vegeta, the Yugi to his Kaiba. Someone who he, yes, doesn't really fuck with and who kind of fundamentally pisses him off, but at the same time, someone he knows was a worthy rival. So to have this little shit literally wear his face, even though really Light's done the same thing in the metaphorical sense, well, I could see how it might bug him. We're doing Highlander rules in this bitch. There can be only one. So it makes sense to me why he'd be upset. But let's go ahead and keep things moving along.
Am I the only one who sees something wrong? The fact that he's wearing a mask says he's only trying to protect himself, not anyone else.
So let's have a more serious conversation about the use of this mask here. Because really, Matsuda's spitting right now. Like, having us come here and reveal ourselves while you're still hiding your own identity is some bullshit. I would also be annoyed if I were him. But Nier goes on to provide a decent enough explanation for why he's doing it, claiming that Kira has likely already seen everyone's face here at one point or another, so it's possible that he could have already written their names down. And that's fair. I mean, we've already discussed this regarding the task force, so I won't belabor that point anymore. Instead, I'll turn my focus to the members of the SPK and talk about how they could have been exposed. Starting with Lindner, she was Takada's most prominent bodyguard, the only American one as far as we can tell, so that alone automatically thrust her into the limelight. Light himself figured that she was SPK the moment he saw her. Then, when it comes to Giovanni, this whole plan was, at least in part, predicated on the idea that he may have already had his name written in the notebook. And then that just leaves Rester, who really hasn't had that much exposure. The biggest thing he's done is pick up Misa and Mogi back on the 31st, and compared to the others, that's basically nothing. But to get back to this scene, I do want to point out that when Nier says the thing about everyone possibly having their names written down already, we do actually see everyone sweating, which I thought was interesting. It's showing us that maybe the SBK members aren't as confident as was previously presented, which, fucking fair. They shouldn't be based on what we know. But Nier goes on to say that he wants to make sure that no one here is already being controlled by the notebook, and so he wants to wait about half an hour or so to see if anything happens. But Light's not really buying that, and he ends up actually addressing it in his own internal monologue, as he states that Nier is likely just stalling, waiting for Mikami to show up. But okay, from there we have about a minute or so of nothing happening. Just a lot of shots of the camera moving around the room. But I will say that there is this shot of Light's watch transitioning into this fan that I thought was really cool. I love transitions like that. But after 30 minutes, Matsuda, who's clearly fed up with Nier, starts popping off again, which ultimately results in Nier agreeing that enough time has passed, and so he goes ahead and removes his mask. And oddly enough, the very first thing he does is smile. Which,
Stop looking at me like that.
But from there, Nier goes on to explain how this is supposed to play out, and, talk about a risky plan. So basically what they're doing now is waiting for the person who's currently in possession of the notebook, Mikami, to show up. And when he does, he's either gonna casually stroll in here with the notebook, or more realistically, he's gonna peek through the door to see who's in here so that he could go ahead and write down all of their names. And they're gonna let him do it, because whoever's name is not written down would obviously be Kira. And, well, suffice it to say, not everyone is a fan of this particular course of action.
What are you saying? What are you trying to tell us, Nier? That some other guy's gonna drop by with the notebook, poke his head in, and kill us all?
And I gotta give it up to Vincent Tong, because the way he delivers that line is just so good. Like, you can hear the frustration and confusion in his voice. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Matsuda's response is so justified, because it's like, you called us here under the pretense of presenting evidence. And now that we're here, we find out that you're gonna use us as some kind of lab rats to test out whatever theory it is you have. And it'd be one thing if Nier went on to properly explain himself, but because he just expects everyone to fall in line, all it does is piss Ide and Matsuda off even more. Like, I don't dislike Nier, but he can be hella frustrating. Same way Ryuzaki could be super frustrating to deal with. Like, after Ide follows up Matsuda's response by saying,
"You want us to sit back and let it happen?"
Nier just ends up saying,
Yes, that's correct.
and then goes on to explain that if the door opens, just let him stroll on in. Or if you notice him peeking through it, just act like you don't. And it's such a crazy ask without any additional information, because why the fuck would I just let him do that if I know he's trying to kill me? Like, come on, you got me so fucked up. But yeah, before Matsuda gets a chance to really let Nier have it, it happens. Mikami shows up.
He's already here.
And okay, just real quick, I never noticed the fact that he moves the Mikami finger puppet behind Hamburglar Kira as he says that. And I just thought that that was funny. But from here on out, things get real chaotic real fast. And I'm actually surprised at how much I found myself laughing during this scene when rewatching this episode. But I think that by nature of slowing this down and trying to absorb everything that's happening so that I can properly talk about it, it just makes it seem very comical. Not bad or anything, just a little unintentionally funny. Like, there are so many quick cuts and jumps to different shots. Like, I'm watching this part at about 40% speed, and I'm trying to look at all of their facial expressions, but every other second it just jumps back to one of these 3 shots of Mikami's eye peeking through this door. And the way the camera keeps jumping around, it's just, it's a lot. And then he finds Light, or God as he says it, which leads to us following him outside, and it somehow gets even more chaotic. Like, he starts writing the names, but he's also saying his catchphrase way more than he usually does. Like, there are 8 names that he needs to write down, 8 people that need to be deleted, and yet, for some reason, he says his catchphrase at least 53 times. And I know he did because I counted, or at least tried to, too, because part of his rant gets drowned out by other characters talking over him. But it's just so hectic and crazy. Like the notebook's just flipping pages on its own like it's the Darkhold. And at one point, a rat randomly shows up and starts running towards Mikami, and he just has no reaction to it. And I'm just like, holy shit, this situation is insane. This presentation is insane. And Teru Mikami is quite literally fucking insane. Like, listen to how he hits this last note. Like, my goodness, Mikami. Or, I guess, my goodness, Kirby Morrow. Man was giving Sean Schimmel a run for his money with that scream. But man, it's the way that it ends that just, it really trips me out. Because we see Mikami just straight up twitching and, come on, y'all. Y'all know that twitch. That's a very specific post certain kind of activity twitch. Like, it's very clear that this man just wet himself, and I'm not talking about piss. But let's actually leave him here to recover while we head back into the yellow box and actually turn back the clock a bit to see what was happening inside while Mikami was outside writing down the names. So from the jump, I just want to comment again on how crazy the facial expressions are in this moment. I mean, obviously Mikami was looking crazy outside, but some of these guys' faces had me cracking up a little bit. Specifically Matsuda's face right here and Giovanni's face right here. But to be fair, this is an appropriate reaction. They're terrified. This is terrifying. And sure, the SBK has a plan in place, but what if they're wrong, you know? Oh, and sorry, as far as what their plan has been this whole time, well, after Matsuda reaches for his gun and is met with an equal show of force from Rester and Giovanni telling him not to do anything, Nier goes on to say that none of them are gonna die because
I modified the notebook.
And from there, he goes on to explain exactly what he and his team did, saying that once they understood Mikami's distinct pattern of using a full page every day, they had Giovanni briefly take possession of the notebook and modify it so that the page Mikami is using today is just a normal piece of paper. They also did this for all subsequent pages too, ensuring that if he did try to, say, go to a different page for whatever reason, it wouldn't make a difference. The only issue would be if he were to go back to a previous page and write the names in the empty spaces at the top and bottom of that page. But given who Mikami is and how he's been shown to use the notebook thus far, that seemed unlikely enough that they were willing to take the risk. But regardless, as smart as this plan is, the fact that Light is still smirking as Nier says this, well, I'd say that it doesn't bode well for him.
I knew it! I knew it! I knew it!
Okay, real quick, can we just talk about this frame? Can we talk about how unhinged he looks? It reminds me of a recent meme that I saw of Light. It said something like, "This is the face of a man with 2 loving parents, a younger sister, and a home with a stable income." But jokes aside, let's talk about this because, like he just said, he knew. And after saying that, we see time screech to a halt as he goes on to lay out the entirety of his plan while the Death Note theme, that's just what it's called, plays in the background. And I'm not gonna lie, this moment is just straight fire. And it's not just what he says, but also the way the scene is presented. It's honestly just dope as hell. But let me not get caught up in the aura of it all. Let's instead see Light explain how stupid these guys all are mathematically. Starting by saying that he always knew that Nier had planned to tamper with the notebook, which is exactly why he swapped it out for a fake one. Meaning that
the one Mikami is writing their names in is the real notebook.
Y'all, I can't even lie. That laugh, man, it does something for me. But from there, he goes on to cover a lot of what we already know. But this time around, we get some extra context that serves to paint a fuller picture. He starts by mentioning the fact that he had Mikami create a fake notebook, and that he had him send pages of the notebook to Takada so that she could start writing down names in his stead. He then goes on to say that he purposefully had Mikami write down names in public so that whoever was tailing him would catch him doing it. And if you're confused by that, given he was using a fake notebook the whole time, well, the way they did it was by having Mikami take a picture of the victim in question with his phone and then send it to Takada along with their name. Like, remember how he pulled out his phone back in episode 33 and we heard the camera sound effect? Yeah, that was him sending a pic to Takada. And because this train scene happens after her and Misa's dinner that evening, she was readily available to write the name down. But that being said, I can't help but wonder, how often could they realistically be doing something like this? Like, in his monologue, Light makes it clear that they were doing it all the time, but I know that can't be the case. For one, they're both incredibly busy people. Takada was the star of her own news program, and Mikami's a full-time lawyer with a set schedule that he adheres to. On top of that, when it came to Takada, she also needed to be away from Lindner's prying eyes in order to do this, seeing as she'd need to look at her phone and pull out a sheet of paper to write down the name. And Lindner was by her side pretty much all the time. And on top of that, we've been led to believe that there's very little crime happening in Japan these days. So how often could Mikami realistically be running into people who were committing crimes like this dumbass? So when you think about it, the fact that their schedules need to align to the point where he's out in a public area while she's got free time where no one else is around, and by sheer coincidence, there's someone in Mikami's immediate vicinity committing some sort of crime that would justify using the Death Note, like, the more I think about it, the more I realize that the odds of Giovanni catching Mikami doing this as quickly as he did is really, really lucky on his part. Or, well, no, I guess not on his part since he's very likely about to die, but more so on Team Kira's part for not having to continue doing this over the course of, like, several months. But anyway, getting back to Light's monologue, he goes on to talk about how Mikami suffers from some pretty severe OCD, and how Nier and the SBK took note of that and used it to their advantage by realizing that they could correctly deduce what page he would be writing on today, given his penchant for writing exactly 1 page a day. Just like how Nier said a second ago. Light then goes on to say that because he knew what Nier was going to do, he made a point to have Mikami check the fake notebook daily for any signs of tampering. Which is what Light was referring to at the end of episode 34 when passing that note to Takada, and what was then confirmed by Mikami in episode 35. Light then goes on to just talk shit on Nier for about a minute, starting by calling him naive, saying that he could have won if he had just taken the notebook as opposed to just tampering with it. He then goes on to, once again, glaze Ryuzaki by saying that he would have considered the possibility of the notebook being fake and would have subsequently tested it out himself. And we know that he's right in saying this because Ryuzaki was going to do that for the 13-day rule right before he died. But to be honest, I am a little confused because in regard to him saying that Nier should have taken it, how does taking the notebook result in a win here? I mean, yes, they'd win this particular battle, I guess. You know, they'd get to live to fight another day. But to be clear, taking that notebook does not win the war. I mean, it's a fake notebook. You gain nothing from uncovering that other than knowing that Team Kira is already aware of what it is y'all are doing. Like, it doesn't get you the real notebook, it doesn't get you any closer to figuring out whoever's actually writing down the names, since you would now know that Mikami isn't, and most importantly, it doesn't get you Light Yagami. In reality, the only way Nier wins here, the way that he wants to, is if he does this exact thing, but also somehow figures out that 1, Mikami is using a fake notebook, 2, he finds the location of the real notebook, and 3, he replaces it entirely without either of the Kiras finding out about it before this meeting, and even saying all of that aloud just sounds like some bullshit given what we know right now. So yeah, Light saying that Nier could have won by taking the notebook once he found it is a little absurd in my opinion. And actually, just real quick, it was bugging me, so I decided to go check the Japanese version out, and Light does not say anything about taking the notebook. At all. Testing it, yes, which he says in both versions, but not taking it. But yeah, from there, Light's little timeout comes to an end, and the clock starts ticking again. And the very first thing Light does is address Mikami outside, asking him if he's already finished writing down the names. And I just want to play this clip to point something out real quick.
Have you finished writing down the names in the notebook?
Yes, I've written them.
And the reason I wanted to point this out is because, did you notice how, even though his voice was pretty soft, they clearly heard him? Like he didn't have to yell or shout to be heard through that door. So I just want you to imagine how fucking crazy it must have been for them when he was just screeching. just a few seconds ago. Like, they heard him. They heard him loud and clear, just screaming at the top of his lungs on the other side of that door. That alone must have been terrifying. Just someone out there shouting the same word over and over. Like, Matsuda pulling his gun out makes even more sense because he must have been like, what the fuck is going on out there? But also, let's talk about Light's question for a second, because what even was that? And not necessarily the question itself, but the fact that he was so calm when asking the question. Despite the fact that, one, Nier just explained that this man is here to try and kill everyone, and two, again, he was just screaming on the other side of that door. Like, being this calm, cool, and collected just seems odd. But then, as Light so aptly puts it in his inner monologue, they're all gonna be dead pretty soon. So I imagine he's like, what's the point in putting in the effort to really sell this, you know? Plus, dude's on the verge of busting out laughing, apparently. So most of his effort is going towards holding that in.
No, I can't laugh yet. I've got to hold it in. They're all gonna die.
One thing I will say, though, Brad Swale always delivers. Like, this whole episode, he's been killing it, just expertly showcasing every aspect of Light's character with just his voice. We've seen elements of him sounding indifferent, of him sounding angry, of him sounding giddy, sinister, cocky. Like, so many facets of his personality are shining through in this episode, and Brad has expressed them all masterfully. In short, this man was born to voice Light Yagami, and rest assured I'll be glazing him even more next time. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Anyway, Nier goes on to say that he finds Mikami's response rather odd, and I just want to take note of Light's face as he turns to Nier. Like, that man looks unhinged. But Nier basically says that he finds it odd that Mikami just casually responded to him the way that he did, which is fair, because why would he do that? Why say anything, really? Why not run right after doing this? I mean, you only need to sprint for 40 seconds before they start dying. Also, speaking of which, the whole 40 seconds thing is such a fucking joke in this episode, because at this point, it's already been 2 minutes and 29 seconds since he started writing down that first name. And no, I'm not counting the part where Light stopped time to stroke himself off about how he just beat Nier. And when it comes to the names, realistically, Mikami took about 50 seconds to write them all down, meaning that at least one person should have died before he was even done. And yet, when Light was thinking about how he can't laugh just yet, he mentions that there's still 35 seconds until they die.
35 seconds. I'll claim my victory then.
And that's just crazy to me because I don't think you know how seconds work, Light. But regardless, after Nier asks Light about why Mikami just responded so casually to him, Light ends up saying,
who knows, maybe he's just honest, or confident that he'll succeed, or perhaps he's seen through your brilliant plan.
And he's just so transparent at this point, because what kind of answer is that? Who knows? Maybe he's just honest. Perhaps he's seen through your brilliant plan. Like, what the fuck, Light? Again, I get it. He's won. Nothing matters anymore. But my goodness, bro. Meanwhile, you have Matsuda with an appropriate response.
In that case, we're in big trouble.
But I just hate that no one is calling Light out. But at the same time, I get it. Worrying about him being so calm and condescending shouldn't be high on their priority list when one of the kiddas has apparently written their names down in his notebook. In reality, Light's kind of the least of their problems right now. But the next thing that happens is Nier calls out to Mikami, telling him that he already knows who he is and the fact that he's been working with Kida, so he might as well just come on in. And I'll admit that Nier is also calmly talking to Mikami, just like Light was, but Nier never freaks out or gets visually nervous like other characters, so it's not too weird to me that he just casually talks to Mikami. And also there's the fact that, never mind. We'll talk about that next time. But when Nier says that, Mikami just stares at him, before then turning to look at Light, who actually seconds Nier's suggestion and also tells him to come on in, which he, gleefully does. What have they done to you, Mikami? But also, and this is really random, but there's this moment where Mikami reaches for the door and they play the most disgusting sound effect. Like, why do you sound so wet and sticky, Mikami? Oh, that's right.
You've done well, Mikami.
Hey, Light, a serious question. How do you look at this dude and not just cringe? Like, just look at him. It's such a deviation from how he was depicted in almost every other scene he's in. And I get that he's happy, excited, elated, but just... oh, it's like they're going out of their way to make this man look goofy as hell. Like, look at his goober ass face. What have they done to you? And I know I keep bringing it up, but the fact that Light could hear him out there screaming is just, it's just so awkward. Like, don't get me wrong, as a person watching an anime, that was a lot, but it's within the bounds of what I expect when watching something like this. But I'm trying to put myself into this actual situation and think about how I would realistically react to the idea of my, coworker, employee, just screeching like that while doing his job. I'd just be like,
"You good, bro?"
How many seconds has it been since you wrote down the first name?
30 seconds.
Mind you, it took him 10 seconds to respond to that question. Also, it's actually been 3 minutes and 57 seconds since he wrote that first name down. But it's okay. You just gotta assume that we're working on Namekian time, I guess. But yeah, from there he just starts counting down, and for the first time we actually get this look from Nier that suggests that maybe things aren't gonna go the way he thinks. Though I will note that he's not actually sweating here. He just looks more... well, I don't even know how to describe this look, to be honest. But while Nier's look might be more difficult to interpret, the same can't be said for everyone else, as they're all clearly terrified about what's about to happen. And it's, I don't know, man, it's a little sad, you know? Like, at this point, we can say that Light has won, right? It seems very clear, very obvious that this is his perfect victory, as he puts it. But, I mean, these people don't deserve to die. They're not bad people. In fact, they're generally good people who are just doing what they believe is right. And part of me wants to argue that Light also thinks he's doing the right thing, but I just have a really hard time believing that at this point. Dude is actively holding in his laughter as he condemns these people to death. He's fucking smiling and gloating as he counts down the seconds until they take their final breaths. And some of these people he's known for like a quarter of his life. They were his father's closest friends and confidants. Like, he's such a sick piece of shit, and I just... okay, let me stop. There will be plenty of time to go in on him and talk more about what comes next when we discuss the next episode, which is aptly titled New World. But for now, we return to Mikami counting down the final 10 seconds before everyone here dies. And once he reaches 39, the music comes to a swift pause as we see Light turn to Nier and confidently say,
"Well, Nier, looks like I win."
And yeah, it really does. But with that being said,
40!
Roll credits. Anyway, that's the end of this video, but before we go, I just want to give a shout out to all of the folks over on our Patreon who are helping to support the channel. I want to thank all of our admirable assessors, our invaluable investigators, as well as our remarkable researchers like Arrow Falcon Green, Blazing Fury 05, Dottie, Game and Alchemist, Gary Wong, Jorge Ochoa Reyes, Legend Dragon, Mitch Cocaron, Pellets, Staff of the Crystal Serpent, The Best, Trinity Schiffer, Tyrant Link, Vanellian, and Yggdrasil. And then, lastly, praise be to our official overanalyzers. Archangel89, Asia, Cavarex XE, Chicken Wugget, C-Mart, Cody for Now, Croy Raiden, Amelia, I Am the Blonde Asshole, Joey Hellbig, Shinigo, and Glitch Faust, who actually did the intro for this episode. I just want to say thanks again to all of y'all for helping make these videos possible. But yeah, if you liked this video, then consider dropping a like. If you really liked it, then consider subscribing. And if you just loved it and want to support the channel, then consider joining the Patreon. Anyway, that's it for this time. Until next time, friends, peace.